used to live out in the West End near my grandmother and grandfather's house. In fact, the thruway came through and took our house. And I used to walk down. That's how I ended up in the garage all the time. I'd walk down, and when I was a young kid, it was back roads, to get to the garage. So I could walk down there by myself and work in the garage, putter around. They'd give me something to do, clean parts and whatever.
How old were you when you started in the garage?
About 9 o'clock. About 9. 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to take some time to discuss my personal hero in this life, my pap. I have to preface this with the disclaimer that Pap would absolutely hate everything I'm about to say. My pap hated when people made a fuss over him. He hated receiving gifts, he was visibly uncomfortable whenever we sang for his birthday, and he would be annoyed if my mom cooked him dinner because he was too worried about inconveniencing her or being a, quote, pain in the butt. Pap hated when people made a fuss over him. So I'm about to make the biggest fuss ever about my pap, because damn it, he deserved it. My pap was named Franklin Kushner, and he was born on December 18th, 1937 in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He was apparently a pretty chubby baby, and his grandfather immediately nicknamed him Tubby. This moniker stuck around for the rest of his life and essentially became his preferred name. Only on legal documents did he refer to himself as Franklin. In all other spheres of life, he was Tubby, or Tub for short.
And that's Tubby Kushner.
I'm good.
To my mom, he was Dad. To me, he was Pap. Pap's mom gave birth to him at home, which was not unheard of in the 1930s, but still was an early testimony to her lifelong tenacity and grit. Eventually, Pap had two younger siblings, a brother named Bob and a sister named Barbara. Pap's grandfather apparently said that Barbara was a, quote, real corker as a baby, and much like the nickname Tubby, Barbara was forever referred to as Corky, or Cork for short. Pap's brother, Bob, however, he just went by Bob. His family was poor growing up. He often talked about his family's outhouse or bathing in a big metal tub filled with water that was heated on the stovetop.
We had an outhouse. We used to take the dog with us because the animals, and to get water, you'd go out and there was a cistern outside, and then you'd pump it in a bucket and bring it in. You probably didn't have too much water to wash with. And I think all three kids would take turns washing in the same tub.
Yuck.
In the wintertime, you had to go out, take the lid off the cistern, smash the ice, put a bucket down, pull it up.
You probably bathe like once a week.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe once a month. Yeah, once a week. I think Saturday night, I don't know. In the kitchen.
From an early age, he gravitated towards the garage. Mechanic work came naturally to him. He told me that he used to watch his own pappy work in the garage, and before long, he was able to pick up the tricks of the trade well enough to become a master mechanic in his own right.
For my uncle and grandfather and dad, they had the garage out there. Through high school, after high school, I used to work there, you know. They kept it Oswald's Garage. In fact, that's the sign that's out in the garage.
Pap's grandfather was named George Washington Oswald. He was born on Washington's birthday, February 22nd, and he was somewhat of a wizard when it came to repairing cars, although his methods of diagnosing mechanical problems were a bit unorthodox. Apparently, he would have his clients pop the hoods of their cars, and then he would proceed to lay across the fender while the client drove so that he could properly listen and pinpoint the issue.
He was an excellent mechanic. He'd open the hood and then lay on the fender, and then they'd go for a ride and he'd listen. But when I say go for a ride, it was back roads. Like when we grew up, we drove in the fields and everything back there. Now there's houses.
My pap soon developed his grandfather's level of automotive expertise. According to my grandmother, the parents of her friends only trusted one kid to work on or drive their cars, and that kid was Tubby Kushner. Throughout his entire life, Pap could fix literally anything, but more on that later. Pap had countless stories from his youth. My favorite was when he and his two siblings tricked their mom into allowing them to buy a pet monkey. Their mom told them that they could buy a monkey if they paid for it themselves, naturally assuming the children had nowhere near enough cash to afford such an animal. Sure enough, they pooled all their money together and came back home with a monkey named Jocko, who became the beloved family pet for many years.
My mom and dad went next door because they figured we didn't have enough money anyway to buy a monkey. And when they came out while they were tying the monkey up, it was $25.
Wow.
That was pretty much money.
like pretty much money. How did you guys get $25?
So I don't know.
The three of them.
I think we robbed a bank. I had an old Ford Roadster with a roll bar in, and we tied him to the roll bar, you know, and then he'd sit up on the roll bar when we were going down the street. And kids would get hollered at because they say they saw a monkey, and then the monkey was down on the seat, you know. I used to take them to work with me down at 11th and Allen.
Okay.
And when the kids would come home from school, they'd get them grasshoppers when it was season. And then they'd bring grasshoppers to the radiator shop. And we put them in the jar and then give the jar to Jocko, and then he'd take the lid off and he'd reach in and grab a grasshopper out. Yeah, he had his big cage, pretty big cage in the living room.
That he made.
Yeah. We took him to the fair, the Allentown Fair, and I didn't want to take him, but Butch Herman, he said he'll carry him. And they used to sell these chameleons for 50 cents. And so the guy showed the monkey the chameleon, and that was it.
Oh no.
And we were in a beer garden, and he jumped over and took some lady's French fries. But it was always fun.
In his 20s, Pap enlisted in the U.S. Army. He never saw combat and was stationed not far from his hometown. He was mostly involved in mechanic work for the Army base.
We were in Fort Dix, New Jersey, so we used to come home every weekend.
In 1962, Pap met Barbara Broski, my Baba.
Well, my roommate, Sally Esser, used to live right across the street from him. And one time I went over to Sally's, and then he came over and And I said that I had to go. And then he said, I have my goddaughter with me, and I'm going to take her home. So I'll take you home. And I said, no, that's all right. I can drive. I'll drive myself. And then he thought, okay. He thought I was being snobby, so.
My pap's gentle and loving nature soon won over the entire Broski family.
My daddy was afflicted with MS when he was in his 40s. And he had a 57 Chevy. It was a convertible. Well, first of all, they loved him. They loved Tubby Kushner.
They liked the car.
Because he could put the roof down, and he did put the roof down. In middle of winter, he would put the roof down, and they would put my daddy in the seat. They would carry him and put him in the seat, and he wouldn't hit his head. And every other car, it had a hardtop roof, and he would get his head conked, but on his car, it didn't. And he said, oh, this car is wonderful. Oh, and he loved him, and he loved him.
This level of tender compassion certainly showed the Broskis what a devoted life partner my pap would be to their youngest daughter. After the wedding, their honeymoon consisted of a cross-country road trip from Pennsylvania all the way out to California, down into Mexico, and back again. Once they returned from their honeymoon, Pap resumed work on building their house, which was purchased as an Aladdin house kit out of Bay City, Michigan. Pap used to tell me how the various parts to their house were delivered on a rail car, and he assembled their future home himself with the help of some close friends and family. He lovingly referred to the house as the Crooked Shack on the Hill, and it became their forever home. With construction nearly complete in 1965, their focus returned to their shared love of travel whenever possible. It was soon apparent that their cross-country honeymoon adventure would become emblematic of their entire relationship. The two of them quickly became expert travelers. Over the next nearly 6 decades, they drove across the country several more times and experienced countless road trips, ultimately driving to 49 out of the 50 states. I've never met anyone who can compare to the traveling escapades of my Baba and Pap.
We're at the Columbia, near the Columbia ice field area. Just pull over. Hi, Graham.
This is
How you doing?
Tubby
It's a rough
Cushing.
life, I'll tell you. If we could get you away from your mother, you'd be on the road. What are we leaving? Oh, we're leaving Budapest. It's what time in the evening? Probably 9 o'clock, 9:15. We're going to go through 67 locks before we get to Amsterdam. And I have the stick on the camera, but I'm shaking because it's cold out. Papa got us there in one piece. He's been driving all through Georgia, and I've been sleeping. Am I crazy or what? Slow up. Get me nervous. Slow down, Papa. Oh my God, I'm shook up. Oh man, here we are.
In their Class A motorhome, Pap was constantly driving them on adventures north to south, east to west. For many years, they would travel somewhere completely novel for every New Year's Eve. He drove them to Alaska in an RV on 4 separate occasions, most recently when he was 81 years old.
Okay, big guy, just so you know that you drove the whole way on the dashboard and we were watching you all the time.
In 1968, they gave birth to my mom, their only child, and Pap was, by all accounts, the best father one could ask for. My mom's first words and first phrase were both in relation to her dad. They supported all of her activities, including her climb to eventually become an elite-level gymnast. Pap was a man of enormous integrity. Once he was traveling with my mom on one of her many out-of-town gymnastics competitions. While out and about with the whole team, the coaches went into a bakery for cookies and they asked Pap to join them. Since all of the gymnasts were on very strict diets and were forbidden from eating cookies, Pap refused, saying, quote, "If they can't eat cookies, then I'm not eating cookies either." Pap continued to be a master mechanic and combined his skills with his love for travel. In the 1970s, he built an RV from scratch in order to continue their cross-country adventures. Adorned on the hood was a massive K for Kushner. When my mom was a little girl, the family was driving back from one of their many road trips, and they stopped at a diner several hours away from home. My mom had a beloved purse that she carried with her everywhere, including into this diner. They ate dinner, got back in the RV, and resumed driving. It was hours later, and they were nearly home when my mom realized that she did not have her precious purse with her anymore. Concluding that they must have left it behind at the diner, my pap turned around and drove back across nearly the entire state of Pennsylvania just in order to retrieve my mom's purse. After gymnastics, my mom and pap got heavily involved in Jeep racing, a shared hobby they both enjoyed and one that brought them even closer together. Once, my pap, Baba, and my mom were returning from a Jeep race late one night. They were in their RV with the Jeep in tow. Pap was driving into the wee hours of the morning and running low on gas, but he was confident that he could make it until the next exit. Unfortunately, this was one instance in which Pap was incorrect, and they ran out of gas on the highway, but not far from the exit. Pap parked the RV on the shoulder of the highway and planned to wait out the few hours until sunrise, at which point he would walk to the nearest gas station. It quickly became obvious that my Baba was not happy about the situation, feeling like a sitting duck on the side of a highway and imagining the risk of being hit by a tractor trailer. So, Pap figured out a way to siphon alcohol, which fueled the Jeep, out of the Jeep that they were towing and into the RV. This ingenious maneuver allowed them to just barely reach the nearest gas station, where they were finally able to fill the tank. No matter what situation he was in, Pap always knew how to handle himself in order to keep his family safe and happy. Although he never attended college, I consider my Pap a genius. He was constantly thinking, constantly ruminating on ways to fix any potential challenges that could be thrown his way.
1, 2, 3, 4, but dot, 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 dot.
Although I never talked to him about it too much, I think my general love for cameras comes from my Pap. While he hated to be in front of the camera, he frequently found himself behind one. In the 1980s, during the dawn of the digital camcorder, Pap purchased one in order to document their travels. However, he quickly began using it to capture countless slices of life, including family picnics and reunions. For years, every Sunday, Pap's parents would host a dinner for the entire family. Thanks to my Pap's love for video cameras, we have several of these precious family dinners preserved forever.
Where are you talking into?
There's a speaker.
No seed in this one.
There's a speaker in the front. You can view it right away. We just take it in the house and you can see it. You just rewind it and
Can you pick it up again?
sure.
You're kidding.
Watch what you hang on to there. That's all because we don't have no X-ray. We don't.
This is PG.
We don't have no X-rated films on this thing, you know. I never knew my brother was such a lovey-dovey.
Yeah, get a new one of it. That's it.
Whoa.
Smack her, Mom. Smack her. I got it. Go ahead.
Oh, Bobby!
Here, Blackie. Come on. Hey, where you going? You. Oh, geez. Oh, geez. I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't want to bump you. Oh, is that what you're having for dinner, Nick?
They have movies you can rent for, how much is that at the IGA?
95, 90 some cents?
They have all kinds of movies that you rent.
Oh, yeah, we do that too.
Do they look as good as a movie that you watch on TV? Or
Sure.
Do they really?
Yeah. Same difference.
Red light's gone.
Is the red light going?
Yeah.
You know what that means?
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah.
Oh, Barger, you probably have your picture on the camera. That's right.
Happy birthday, dear Mom. Happy birthday to you. 39.
Back in the 1980s, my Baba and her cousin took a bus to New York City one evening to attend a Broadway play. After the show had ended, the two of them went to a local cafe and grabbed a cup of coffee while they awaited their 11:30 p.m. bus ride back home. It wasn't until the very last second that they realized there was no 11:30 p.m. bus. They had missed all of the routes back home, and the two of them were effectively stranded in New York City. They called my pap and asked if he could come rescue them, to which he immediately agreed, and they returned to the cafe. My pap, seeing this as an opportunity for another road trip, made one quick stop before driving up to the city: his mother's house. It must have been around midnight, so I can only assume his mom was already asleep, but Pap called her up and probably said, "Mom, you want to take a trip to New York City? Get in the car." His mom happily obliged, and the two of them drove up to the city in the wee hours of the morning, relishing the opportunity to spend time together and embark on an unexpected, spontaneous road trip, which was Pap's favorite kind of adventure. My dad was also an avid racing fan, and so he fit well into the family. When my parents married in June of 1995, Pap welcomed my dad like a son.
I want to welcome Mike into the Frosty-Kushner relation here. We had a good past year together, and I hope we have a heck of a lot more.
Before long, the two of them began frequently working together in my Pap's big garage. Speaking of working, let's just rewind real quick. Pap's profession was initially the co-owner of a radiator shop, but that didn't last long. According to my mom, he felt guilty charging the customers.
I think I was only there 2 years, and I didn't like dealing with customers, and we'd have to go all the time and make bills out, you know.
After a few years, Pat became a truck driver for the Mason and Dixon lines, which he enjoyed immensely. His quiet and introspective nature fit truck driving like a glove, and he cherished the solitude and the open road. At some point, he hurt his back, and he couldn't get clear to continue truck driving. So he quickly found other work, and eventually he finished his professional career with mechanic work at a local airport, which he retired from in the late 90s in order to look after his one and only grandchild, me.
Hey, before we ride around the floor. Oh, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Now he's going. Hey, where'd he go? Graham, where are you? Where are you? There you are. Say little. Nut. Brown. Hair. Hello. Honk, 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 honk. Okay. Bye, Pap. Pap's not going no place.
Pap's staying. This
You
isn't Home Alone
and me.
yet.
This is you and me.
How much do you love Mommy?
How much?
That much! Wow! Thank you, Graham.
Pretty much. How much do you love Daddy? Good.
Oh, boy.
Good.
How much do you love Pap? That much. Wow. Good boy.
Are you all done?
All done.
All done. Good. You all done, Mom?
Was it good?
All done, Mama.
Oh, look, he's stuck. Oh, no, he's stuck. Oh. Oh.
Happy.
What a mess. Let's see, let me see if I can get it off. No, it's stuck. I can't get it off, look. Well,
You're gonna have to sleep with that tonight.
it'll just have to stay there. Okay, come on, we'll get it off. Come on, Pepper. Come on, 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 come on.
Happy birthday, dear Pappy. Happy birthday to you.
Yay! Wow, fun.
My parents built a house on the property given to them by my Baba and Pap and lived right next door, so I grew up visiting them on a daily basis. To refer to them as my grandparents seems genuinely reductive. They were, for all intents and purposes, a second set of parents to me. When I was a child, my Pap would walk down to our house to babysit me. He'd sit on a big green recliner chair in our living room. He'd set me on his lap, and he would tell me stories about his own grandfather. He would call these Pap stories, and I grew to anxiously anticipate hearing new Pap stories every day.
I guess we're fortunate. Graham lives right next door to us. And when I was 62, day after I was 62, I retired. He's been taking care of me and Baba all this time. So,
A lot of my earliest memories involve my Pap. He would almost always wear a flannel shirt. And for years, I called any flannel design a, quote, Pap shirt. My Baba and Pap took me on countless trips as a child and always treated me with overflowing love. Once, when I was 5 years old, I told my Pap I wanted the book Jack and the Beanstalk. Pap drove me all over town looking for a bookstore that sold the book, which was surprisingly hard to locate. When he finally found the book, he purchased it immediately. When we got home, I began to read the story, only to become instantly terrified and demand that Pap hide the book away where I could never see it again. Rather than get angry, my Pap just did what he did best. He laughed, dutifully hid the book, and did whatever he could to cheer me up. As I grew into my teenage years, Pap continued to be a source of support and comfort. Pap is the one who taught me how to drive. As an anxious 16-year-old, I was a little scared to drive, and my parents were a little scared to drive with me. The only person who could handle such a task was my Pap, who approached this challenge the same way he approached everything in life, with a calm, collected head and a sense of humor. Thanks to his truck driving days, my Pap knew the nearby roads like the back of his hand. He never needed a map. He'd just tell me, turn right up there, make a left at the bottom of the hill, and I trusted him wholeheartedly. If I ever made a mistake, he'd never get upset. He'd tell me it was all right and give me encouragement. The first time we went driving together, he kept me exclusively on small backcountry roads. The second time, however, my Pap took me on the Pennsylvania Turnpike without warning me. I had never driven that fast before, and so I was about to panic, but Pap's comforting demeanor told me that everything would be okay. In the 10 years since then, I believe I've taken after my Pap as an avid enjoyer of long road trips. Pap took any excuse to go on a long drive. On my very first day at a full-time job after college graduation, Pap drove himself and Baba over an hour just to grab dinner with me after my first day of work. After my Baba retired from school teaching, she and my Pap began wintering in Florida. During one of these excursions, they had some friends visit them at their RV in Cortez. On this particular occasion, their friends were excited to go see a rocket launch that was scheduled in Cape Canaveral at 4 o'clock in the morning on one of the days they were visiting. The only problem was that Cortez is on the Gulf side of Florida, while Cape Canaveral is on the ocean side. As we all now know, there was nothing my pap loved more than a long road trip. So, in the wee hours of the night, Pap drove my Baba and their friends across the state of Florida in order to make the 4 a.m. rocket launch. To everyone's shock and disappointment, the rocket launch was delayed by 24 hours, mere minutes before it was scheduled to take off due to cold weather conditions. Dejected, they drove the 4-hour journey back to their RV in Cortez. However, my Pap was not one to disappoint anyone. If his friends wanted to see the rocket launch, he would make damn well sure they saw it. After sleeping for a few hours, everyone got back in the car and he again drove them across the state of Florida, where they were finally able to see the launch the following morning. This excursion turned into 16 hours of driving back and forth across Florida, but Pap didn't care. He was in his element, and the icing on the cake was that everyone was happy. In 2020, just mere weeks before the COVID pandemic outbreak, my partner Lauren and I flew down to Florida in order to surprise Bob and Pap, who were in the midst of their annual trip down south for the winter.
Hi.
Hi. We spent a long weekend with them, and every day, Pap would drive over to our Airbnb to pick us up. Lauren and I never knew where we were going. Pap simply had some plan in mind, and we were along for the ride. As with everything in life, we knew that with Pap in charge, we were all in good hands. Over those several days, Pap drove us unannounced to see manatees, visit a world-famous strawberry stand, he took us to Universal Studios, and he paid for us to go parasailing. Pap always had something fun in the back of his mind, and I attribute my spontaneous nature entirely to my Pap. My Pap was a man of few words, an unabashed introvert who could often be found staring off into space, unquestionably pondering his latest project. He was quiet, but there was incredible strength and resilience in his quiet. He had a subtle way of letting you know that he cared.
The only thing I'm doing, it seems like I'm doing all the talking.
That's fine. I have no problem with this.
I'm sure you don't.
He also had an incredible sense of humor despite his quiet nature. He was never the class clown type of man, but he always, and I mean always, had a wry joke up his sleeve to bring levity to any situation. He would often sit in silence for some time before subtly delivering one of the funniest one-liners imaginable. His lighthearted attitude extended into all he did. Whenever you asked him how he was feeling, no matter what, his answer was always the same. Still kicking. And his laugh, oh, his laugh. Deep and hearty and genuine. His laugh let you know that everything would be okay. Pap reveled in the simple pleasures of life. He loved riding his bike, an activity he continued well into his 80s. Since, as I mentioned before, he hated to be fussed over, he was never what you would regard as a, quote, high-class, fancy kind of man. For nearly every meal of his life, Pap enjoyed either food from a diner or a fast food hamburger. I remember once in my late teens, going out to a high-end restaurant in Canada with Pap. Seeing my Pap in such a place was like seeing a fish out of water, and I loved him for that. He didn't need expensive meals or champagne to be sure of himself. He was high class in his own humble way. My Pap never asked for help. I think he was too mortified at the thought of ever being an inconvenience to anyone, which is certainly something he never was. During the COVID pandemic, Baba and Pap elected to stay home for the winter rather than travel down to Florida during the colder months as they typically did in retired life. Pap, not used to the bitter chill or the onslaught of snow, attempted to shovel his driveway all by himself. I saw this through my parents' kitchen window, and I bundled up and ran out to him. I asked him if he needed any help, and he replied with, "Oh, well, only if you're not already busy." I knew right then that he desperately needed assistance, because in the humble language of Pap speak, that meant, "Dear God, yes, please, I need help now." That was one of the only times in my entire life that Pap actually accepted help from someone else. He was always just giving to those around him instead. Even when my Pap broke his ankle in the early 2000s, he still refused to ask for help from anyone. Armed with a cast, crutches, and occasionally a wheelchair, Pap still proceeded to do whatever chores he could to help everyone else out, never thinking of his own needs for a second. You can't talk about my pap without discussing servitude, devotion, humility, and selflessness. My pap was the most giving man I will ever meet, and he devoted his entire life to service for others. Every day of his life, he dedicated all of his being to helping others, and never once did he ever think of himself. My pap was extremely devoted to his own mother, buying her a dozen roses every single Valentine's Day until she passed away in 2014. He gave his all to my baba, helping her in every aspect of life. I could not leave Pap's house without him secretly slipping me money. When I told him I didn't need it, he would always say, "Yeah, but it helps." Once, when I was a teenager, Pap tried to slip me some cash and I adamantly protested. That was one of the few times he got stern with me. "Listen," he said, "you're gonna take this money now, but you have to promise me something. Someday, when you're my age and you have grandchildren, you have to do the same thing for them, okay?" I would not be a filmmaker without my Pap's constant servitude. The first camera I ever used belonged to my Pap, which she used to film their travels, but gifted to me in order to make movies when I was still a small child. Pap hated to be on camera. He frequently avoided being in photographs, and if he was unfortunate enough to be caught in front of a camera lens, it was even more rare that he would crack a genuine smile. Despite this, when I was 11 years old, I asked my Pap to act in my little movies. Of course, my Pap agreed. Although he might not have been any Marlon Brando or Daniel Day-Lewis, he never once complained or argued against me. He dutifully repeated all of his lines exactly as I requested.
This is the journal for those who searched for their world beyond. It was passed down from my grandfather to my dad to me. Now I'm giving the journal to you.
As my love of filmmaking grew throughout my teenage years, my grandparents did all they could to foster this passion. They bought me film equipment, even without fully understanding what it was that they were purchasing. They allowed me to use their house as a filming location on countless occasions.
Sorry, Pap, you're like
The test subject.
Test dummy.
When I was a high school sophomore, I was filming a horror movie in their house one autumn day while they were out and about. As nightfall descended and our film shoot went predictably over schedule, I began to wonder why my grandparents hadn't returned home. It was getting close to midnight and they were still nowhere to be seen. I stepped outside only to realize that they had actually arrived home hours before. In order to keep from interrupting my film shoot, they were camping out in their RV in their own backyard. Over the following years, they allowed their house to be used as a filming location on countless other occasions, as well as my Pap's truck, my Pap's big garage, the boiler room in their basement, and their RV, which I shot an entire feature-length film inside. My Pap also built countless props and pieces of equipment with me. He once turned an old Rode microphone into a cold shoe mount for an external monitor. He and I built not just one, but 2 different dolly systems over the years. He turned an old rotating tray into a camera rig. Most recently, Pap created a contraption to simulate someone being stabbed with a knife for a dark comedy I shot last year. If there's one takeaway from this, I want everyone to understand that I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for the overflowing spirit of generosity my Pap showed me each and every day. I also need to mention that Pap was an expert Christmas gift wrapper. As a child, Pap would take me out Christmas shopping a few weeks before the holiday, and he and my mom shared a tradition of Christmas shopping on the morning of every Christmas Eve. As I grew into an adult and I started Christmas shopping on my own, I would still take all of my presents up to my Baba and Pap's house so that Pap could help me wrap. Not only was the wrapping immaculate, but Pap could turn the littlest of gifts into something grand. Even if he was just giving you a gift card or some cash, he would still put it in its own special boxes which he recycled for continued use every single Christmas. I'm pretty sure he was still reusing some boxes from the 70s. And he would wrap the box and put a little bow on top. No matter how simple or small the gift, he still made sure it was exciting. Over the past several years, as I graduated college and grown into a young adult, I felt my appreciation for all that my Pap has done for me grow stronger and stronger. This was a difficult appreciation to express at times. As I mentioned earlier, my Pap was an incredibly quiet man. Since I knew he hated being fussed over and our conversations were usually brief, I tried to express my appreciation however I could, and I frequently did my best to let him know that he was my hero. There were a number of blessings over the last few years, with a major one being my 2 dogs, Spot and Arrow. As I mentioned previously, Pap hated getting his picture taken, so prior to rescuing my puppies, I have very few photos of my Pap genuinely smiling. But God, did he love those dogs, and God, did they ever love him. He would constantly pet and pamper them, often getting down and laying on the hardwood floor, just so that he could better play with them. Whenever he did this, I would take out my camera in order to snap a picture. I went from having a small handful of pictures of my Pap to literally hundreds, 99% of which depict Pap cuddling with a dog, a genuine smile plastered across his face.
How does that feel? How does that feel?
Go on, Spot.
I'm sliding out. What's the matter? What? What's the matter? Oh, what? I don't know. What's wrong here?
Since Pap and Baba loved the pup so much, they became our de facto babysitters. Whenever my partner Lauren and I were going anywhere, my Pap and Baba would watch the dogs. Spot and Arrow both suffer from some health issues, and they have to take daily medication as a result. You could not find a more diligent caregiver than my Pap. With the same seriousness with which he had memorized all of his own medications or my Baba's medications, Pap had memorized the dog's medication schedules by heart. He would often leave me notes, letting me know the exact time he had last fed the dogs or last given them pills, down to the minute. I never had to worry about Spot or Arrow when they were with my Pap. As long as he was there, I knew for certain that they were in good, loving hands. When my one dog Arrow needed heart surgery in the fall of 2023, Pap was noticeably anxious. He texted me several times throughout that day, asking me for updates on her health and letting me know that they were praying for her. When my mom needed heart surgery the same fall, this process was repeated. He texted me constantly asking if I had heard any updates. Pap cared, and while he was never gushy or sentimental, you knew damn well how much he loved you. Several years ago, I casually mentioned to Pap that he and I could work together on building a cage for Lauren's guinea pigs. Within a week or two, he called me up to their house and brought me down to the basement, where he had already completed 2 massive, expertly designed guinea pig cages. When I moved into my first apartment, Pap was there to help, and the pride on his face was evident. He was so proud of all that I had accomplished. When Lauren and I caught COVID in the winter of 2023, Pap, the ever-selfless saint, offered a drive to deliver us anything we could possibly need, despite the fact that we now lived an hour away from him. When I was working on a particularly difficult film shoot one winter, Pap got up at the crack of dawn every day in order to help me load his generator, which he was generously lending to me, into his tow-behind trailer so that I could haul it to the filming location. When I returned home in the evenings, drained and exhausted, Pap would make me a cup of hot tea and listen to me dutifully as I told stories about the day's events. Pap met my mom at the park early every single morning for the past several years in order to watch over her sunrise walks with her dog. We thought Pap would live forever. He was in unbelievable health. He rode his bike, he continued to tinker in his big garage, and he drove back and forth from Florida every single year so that my Baba could enjoy the winter months in a warmer climate. His mother lived to be 93, so we assumed that he had a long way to go. But on May 7th, 2024, I got a call that I had been dreading for my entire life. My Pap had been in a physical therapy facility with my Baba. He had bent down to fix an ace bandage on her ankle when he suddenly felt weak and he started to collapse. I left my work immediately upon hearing the news and hauled ass, driving up the turnpike as quickly as I could. When I arrived at the emergency room and met my parents, my worst nightmare had already come true. Pap lay on the table, unmoving. He apparently had a massive heart attack. The doctors had desperately attempted all life-saving measures as per his request when asked by medical staff, but they were unsuccessful. My world was shattered. My hero was gone. The last time I ever saw my Pap, he was standing out in the pouring rain in order to help me pack Spot and Arrow's food into the back of my car. He then ran inside and came out, holding a big package of Stella D'Oro cookies, a favorite snack of mine as a child, that he continued to give to me every time I saw him, and a crate full of Gatorade. He piled these gifts into the back of my car. I thanked him, and I told him that I loved him. And he disappeared into the rain, and I never saw him again. The last text he ever sent me was a picture of my Baba cuddling my dog, Arrow. The last communication I ever gave him was writing him a simple note, reading, "Thank you for watching the girls. Love, Graham and Lauren." I left this for him during his final session of babysitting our dogs, less than 72 hours before his passing. His last dinner was a McDonald's hamburger and a Diet Coke. His final meal was a breakfast at a diner, 2 eggs over hard, home fries, and wheat toast. His final road trip was driving to a Verizon store to buy a new phone charger for my Baba that had a longer cord so it could properly reach from the outlet to her hospital bed. In the final minutes of Pap's life, there were several things that stood out. When asked by EMS personnel if he wanted all resuscitation efforts made, his response was, "Yes, I do." No matter how tired he may have been leading up to this, he was committed to living. And that wasn't just for himself, it was for all of us, his family, who needed him. In the EMS tech's own words, he loved his family. Something he had asked us all in the room was to tell his wife and family that he loved them. His first concern was that need to communicate his love for his wife and family, not himself. He wasn't concerned for his own well-being. He put you all first. When they were wheeling him on the gurney out of my Baba's room, it was just before 1:15 p.m. According to medical records, he was completely alert and he knew what was happening to him. My Baba had been whisked into the hallway in a wheelchair, and that's where she stayed as Pap was pushed past her. In the final 5 minutes of his life, and knowing he was at the end, my Pap slipped his hand out from under the sheet, reached over, and grasped Baba's fingers. According to her, he said, "Don't worry." Even in the end, he didn't want her to fuss. At 1:20, in the ambulance en route to the emergency room, he went into cardiac arrest. When I last talked to him, a few days before all this occurred, I know I told him that I loved him. I know he said it back. I don't know what I'm gonna do without my Pap. I know a lot of people say that whenever they lose a loved one, but I never experienced this until now. He was the man I wanted to model my life after, and we all feel so lost without his presence. So I guess moving forward, the way to best honor my Pap is to live life like he did. He never belonged to a church. I don't think he was a particularly religious man, although he did often reference the man upstairs. But his life philosophy was more righteous than anyone I've ever known. And it's the philosophy I choose to subscribe to. What would Pap do? I see the love that Pap demonstrated all over my life. I see Pap's love in my mother, his only daughter. My mom could not have been a more devoted and caring mother to me, constantly nurturing me in all that I did. Mom fostered my love of filmmaking, supported me in all my endeavors, gave me constant friendship, and continues to show endless love for me. Pap saw that, and I know when he reflected on her role as a parent, he was so proud of her. I see Pap-like love in my partner, Lauren, who refused to leave my side in the difficult days following Pap's death. Lauren was glued to my hip, ensuring that I never had to face life alone. She cried with me and held me and comforted me. She drove me around everywhere and fed me and paid for everything. The only moments in which she was not there comforting was when I had to leave her side in order to shower. And I know Pap would have been so proud of her selflessness. I see Pap-like love all over. I see it in my dad, who called me numerous times on that awful day just to make sure I was gonna be okay and that I was safe, and reminding me to be there for Mom. I see it in the way my dad tenderly cares for the tools Pap had left behind. I know in his eyes that messy assortment of countless wrenches is emblematic of Pap's very being. I see my Pap's love in his siblings, my great Uncle Bob and great Aunt Corky. Uncle Bob is a loving and dedicated grandfather to his own grandchildren, enthusiastically attending all of their various sporting events without fail. Although Aunt Corky now lives over an hour away, she has made time to visit my Baba every week since my Pap's passing. I know he would be so grateful and overjoyed that the care and commitment he showed towards Baba is being carried on. I see it in the way my Baba pets Spot and Arrow, constantly rubbing their heads long after her hand has fallen asleep and her fingers are sore. I know Pap would smile, knowing that she's there to love on them the same way that he did. I wish Pap was still here. I wish he was around for a long, long time. I wish I could have said a proper goodbye. To know that's the end, that I will never have any more Pap stories of my own to tell my own grandchildren one day, hurts. But I take some comfort in knowing that if I can live a life like him, if I can be as selfless and humble, as dedicated as my Pap, even half of that as my Pap, then a part of him will always be carried with me. I truly am glad that my middle name is Franklin, named after him, a tradition I plan on continuing with my own children. Pap, I miss you. I love you. I will try to live every day as you lived. I'll keep on kicking. And I'm sorry for all the fuss. What was, like, if you had to pick like one moment as like the happiest you were in your life, what would it be?
Probably when you came along, I don't know, or when your mom came along, but
Yeah.
when Spot and Arrow came along.
That says, Dear Dad/Pappy, with loving thoughts and memories of a wonderful father you've always been. I think she's spoofed. I think so. With heartfelt gratitude for the special grandfather you are. With warm wishes for you to enjoy your birthday and remember today and every day how much we love you. Love always, Nikki, Michael, and Graham. Right.